What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Hobby Hotline Overtime, the Tuesday night edition of Hobby Hotline. As always, my name is Drew, or the DH, and joining me tonight, we've got the wonderful Uncle Rich. How's it going?
Thank you. Good evening, world.
Yes, and then we got the man himself, Ryan Nolan. What's up, dude?
How's it going?
Can't complain. Can't complain. We just won a baseball game 8-0, so I'm in a good mood tonight. I didn't have to argue with an ump. I almost got kicked out of 2 games, so we didn't get kicked out. We won 8-0. It's a good night.
Good night. I miss the baseball games. I used to play when I was a kid.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. What's up, Texas Card Dude, Brad, Chris Harris, everybody? Thank you guys so much for tuning into the show. Once again, Hobby Hotline Overtime. Please call in and join the show. I'm going to post the link in the chat. If there's anything whatsoever that you guys would like to discuss, have a question for us, please feel free to call in or just type it in the comments if you don't want to call in. Either way, not a problem whatsoever. But what's going on, Card Killer? Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. There's a link right there for you in the chat, everybody. But, guys, I guess we'll start today off. Yesterday, some big news dropped. Brian Gray and Leaf have apparently had it up to here with waiting on redemptions, dealing with redemptions. They seem to be about as fed up with it as collectors are, and they have sued CD Lamb. What do you guys think about this? This is the first lawsuit that's been put out on a player for not fulfilling redemptions.
Well, one thing is Brian's dealing from an interesting position.
Yeah.
He does not have a league license. He does not have a players association license. All his contracts are directly with players.
Yep.
So it's an interesting gamble in a way because word gets around players. Hey, if you don't, this guy is a real bleep because I didn't sign for him, but who cares because he just sued me. And you should not sign for him anymore either. That's one thing that can happen. But I think Brian is looking at it, and I have no idea. I'm not thinking for Brian, but my guess would be that Brian is saying, I have nothing to lose.
Yes.
And if he's got nothing to lose and he's got law on his side with the signed contract, he's figuring, I might as well go for it.
Mm-hmm.
He's definitely trying to look out for those collectors with the redemptions. Like if I pulled a redemption out of a pack and sometimes waiting 2 or 3 years, I mean, look how fast the card market has changed over the past few years. There's people that are still wanting to get cards back from Panini, Topps, or Leaf, all the way back from 18 or earlier. And that's before the flood of all the brand new collectors. Definitely is trying to make a statement. The iffy part, though, is whether athletes now are going to look at it like, I'm not going to sign. And they're making a lot of athletes already making millions of dollars a year. I don't know how much they're getting paid to sign for an autograph, but at the end, they might look at it like, it's not worth the money. I'm already making so much. I could spend the extra few hours. I don't know how long it'll take. I assume it's at least a few hours of just sitting there in a hotel room signing autographs nonstop. I'll spend those other hours at a club or working out or spending time with family.
Yeah, I actually had a chance to talk with Brian for a little bit yesterday as soon as I saw the news drop. And Rich, from the couple things that I can say from the conversation, your hunch is pretty much dead on from what I heard was that, nothing to lose in this matter. And when you were asking the prices, Ryan, this one, they have announced it was a $100,000 contract. Apparently, it was after his rookie contract, so he fulfilled that one. They signed another one. Now, I guess when you get paid, when you get all those millions, when you get your signing bonus, those stickers and that $100,000 isn't as needed, I guess, as it once was. But that's what this one looks to be all about. But Rich, I mean, you nailed it. Like he's got nothing to lose here. He's in an interesting situation where no other company's in. And I think with the NIL and everything right now, he's built incredible relationships with tons of athletes through the years to make this brand a success. I could see this pushing maybe some of the big guys away, but I also think he sees, hey, there's a whole new crop of people for me to be able to deal with. There's a whole new, there's so many different routes that he can go. That may not be what collectors are collecting now, but as you said, Brian, it's an ever-changing hobby all the time.
And remember, for a lot of these athletes, NIL we know is changing things.
Yeah.
But for a lot of these athletes, especially in between the time of their senior year and they get drafted and they sign the NFL contract, there is that dead spot where they're really not going to make any money.
Yeah.
And these contracts, as you pointed out, this one's after the rookie year contract.
Yeah.
So this is not part of that discussion. But for a lot of players, this is significant money before they ever cash their first paycheck.
Plus, I was going to say, too, they do all the non-sport releases as well. So they have, beyond all the different league licenses, they get a bunch of different celebrities and musicians that are signing with their Pop Century brand as well.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting. I don't think I'd ever see any of the other. Would you ever? I mean, I guess Topps and Panini and everybody really can't because they're kind of protected by. I mean, I'm assuming Players Association, the league, everything else are going to step in and stop a lot of. Panini or Topps tried to do it, which gives Brian a much different situation. But how do you think this all plans out? You think? What do you think? What do you guys think? And what do you guys think in the comments? Let us know what you think. That 70s card show says he has a lot.
I have no idea. I'd rather hear what Paul Lesko has to say.
Yes.
The leading hobby lawyer on issues like this. I'd much rather know what Paul has to say. But one thing to always remember with Fanatics purchasing Topps is Fanatics, Ruben is a part owner of the 76ers. He has relationships with a lot of big name athletes. Yeah. The hope is, and it's never a guarantee, the hope is it may actually make athletes more willing to sign their Topps items. And if that's the case, that's a win there. But it's obviously not a win in other places.
Plus, Fanatics, if I remember correctly from the National, they had a bunch of different posters on like exclusive signees. Like they signed Ohtani to an exclusive deal that year and had a poster plaque. So there's a few other baseball players as well. So I assume if they had those exclusive autograph signed contracts and they push out so much memorabilia already during the same signing sessions, they'll just give them the cards.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with it all. I do agree with that 70s card show. He does have a lot to lose because, Rich, like you said, this is, this could push a lot of athletes away. It could put to the point where some athletes don't want to sign and some people have to get left out of products. And if, some of the bigger names have to be left out, I mean, hey, CD's a great veteran hit in the second year Leaf product. I mean, that's an excellent hit. So, I mean, if they start to not want to sign there because of this, then, that's a interesting proposition, but it is nice to see, him using his power to do what he can, because it looks like this situation has just gotten a little out of hand. We all know Brian. He's not somebody that's just going to, do this for no reason without talking to somebody and trying to exhaust every option possible to get this stuff done. But, it's interesting to me. I was surprised to see it. I didn't think we'd ever see a lawsuit directed towards a player on it. So that one was interesting to me.
I don't know if I'm that player. I'm signing those autographs for that quick $100,000. I don't know.
For real. Right, give me like a couple days and a cup of coffee and just set those stickers next to it and just bing, bang, boom, I'm done. Yeah.
To answer John Keating, the 70 card show last comment, I believe, if I remember correctly, not just the NFLPA, but the NFL and Major League Baseball Players Association, MLB properties, and NBA properties and Players Association, they all have some equity in Fanatics.
Yes, that was the big, when that was announced, that was the big kind of massive change that all of these companies were going to get equity into stuff like that, which, a lot of people have said that equity right there and the fact that they have a stake in it is probably going to make these athletes want to sign more, at least for Fanatics and Panini. Fulfill these a little quicker because, they do have something about this.
And just remember the NFL player rookies this weekend just did the NFL rookie photo shoot where they sign autographs with Panini and, and obviously it's different price levels, But there are, so that will, for the first time since 2019, we actually had the real rookie premiere photo shoot and signing and all of that. So we will, I think, see some more actual autographs and less redemptions in the cards in 2022, especially in football.
What
and
did
then
you
probably basketball, whenever there's usually a basketball rookie premiere or whatever they call it.
What did you think of the rookie premiere this year? The checklist and stuff was a little interesting. The group of people that was there, it looked cool, but it was incredibly defensive heavy. It was incredibly wide receiver heavy. UDFAs being invited. It's a lot more different than, when you've got 4 or 5 of those quarterbacks stacked in right there at number 1. It was a different looking rookie premiere this year. I think it's cool that they have it. The only downfall, in my opinion at least, is I really enjoyed the rated rookies where they weren't posing like they were throwing a football over a mountain. Like, I want to see in-game shots as opposed to just standing around with your helmet off. But, maybe they'll do some cool rookie premiere stuff. But the checklist on the rookie premiere was interesting. I don't know if you saw it or not, but there wasn't much in there. It was interesting.
But that was what was going on with the NFL draft this year.
I know.
I mean, so that they're dealing with the hand they're dealt with. This is not a year where 5 or 6 quarterbacks go in the first round. No. This is like 1991 where it's good luck and figure it out.
Yep. 100%. Yeah, Giannis should sue. Giannis can sue CD, but Panini might want to sue Giannis since. They probably don't anymore. Maybe when they lose that license, they can, since keeping all those 101s his rookie year. But we won't get into that today. But he's got Giannis and CD, some stand-up guys there. We do have a question in the chat here from DR. What's going on, brother? He asks, I feel like quite a few people have rotated out of modern and moved into the vintage card space thinking that vintage will always go up. Do you think there's a false sense of security in vintage? Now, I know you guys wanted to discuss a lot about vintage today. So with DR's question, Rich, I'll let you start it off. But what do you think?
Ryan, why don't you start off?
Ryan.
Yes. I think it's with the journey of the collector. At least most people, when they start off collecting, they're going to start right away with modern cards because that's what you see every day. Those type of players. And over the years, as you start collecting, you realize, like, why am I chasing after the next big thing if I can already get the big thing? And you're starting to see that a lot with the people that joined the hobby in 2018 or 19. They're getting a little bit burnt out and they're going towards the past and looking at other opportunities from there. And the second part of the question, do you think there's a false sense of security in vintage? Absolutely. Over the last year or two, there's been a few different players that have spiked quite a bit and dropped. You hear a lot of different people, content creators say, oh, vintage never goes down. That's incorrect.
Yes.
Right? So vintage normally appreciates year after year. There's limited quantities of these cards out there. There's only so many 7s of 8s or even 9s on some of the older years. But players like even Jackie Robinson spiked so much last year and are coming back down because what happens is a lot of these people will go out there, oh, I'm going to get a Jackie. And then 2 months later, oh, I don't want this card anymore. They're going to go to a card show and then flip it for something modern. And it's happened to Jackie Robinson. It's happened to Sandy Koufax. And it's happened to Willie Mays within the last year. People rush towards them, Koufax and Mays, because they're hoping that I know it sounds awful, but a lot of people are hoping they pass since they're getting older age. They'll buy those cards, hold on to them for a few months, and then go, oh, I'm bored. I want to get back into modern. And the cycle continues to happen with those players right now.
Yeah.
Well, nothing goes up forever.
Right.
And there are peaks and valleys. I mean, even if you want to consider the Fleer Jordan a vintage card, and you can argue 35 years later, it's a vintage card.
Yeah.
It has come down from its peak in the very highest grades.
No, absolutely. And, Rich, you nailed a part that I'm looking at, kind of in the middle here between vintage and modern. You've got that set that's getting whatever we'll call it pre-vintage or whatever you want to call it right now. And almost into junk era 90s stuff, getting in that 30, 35 year area. That stuff to me is almost a safer bet than a lot of the. I mean, there is some vintage that I think is a very safe bet, but I do think it, like you said, Ryan, that thought that vintage is king and everything is always going to go up is nuts. And I laugh every time I hear it. I don't bother with the conversation. But I think personally that 90s era, especially basketball, and especially with Topps getting the license back, Bowman's Best, Finest, those early year products like those, I think those are things that are safer investment, at least in my opinion, and things that I think are going to go up as you see a lot of these players start to get a lot more love. The PSA set registry, I know for 94, 95 Finest is going crazy right now. There's a lot of, there's a lot of stuff coming into that market of vintage here in the near future. But I don't think I always keep, most of my stuff in vintage, some in modern. I dabble in both. But if the question is like DR said, if there's a false sense of security in vintage, in my opinion, 100% absolutely. I think people look at one or two sales and don't bother to do the research or any of the follow-up and just assume that it set a new record, so it's got to set one in the future, and that's just not how it is.
Well, Drew, you actually nailed something there. When you're talking about those iconic Topps brands of the 90s, there's a lot of people of probably a little bit older than you, but we'll say your age and just slightly older, who came back during the pandemic.
Yes.
I use what we call the 20-25 year rule. Brian, you're an exception to that, obviously.
I'm not.
That, people come back to the hobby after 20-25 years.
Yep.
They get settled, they get their kids, they get their jobs, or, their house is getting closer to being paid off, so they're not, with mounting bills every month. And then they go back to the hobby for their kids, for what they were with kids. Well, think about it. 25 years ago, who is the 96, 97 key rookie? I think it's Kobe.
Yeah.
It is.
So
it is 97, 98 would be Duncan, 96 right. Kobe. Yeah.
And so even the 30, we can even use a 30-year rule, but it's usually 20 to 25 years.
Yeah.
So those people usually have disposable income, and they're more settled, and they want to go back to their youth. So you are going to see probably a spike in some of those 90s basketball cards, because basketball took off to a large extent in the mid and late 90s after the baseball strike. I remember at my Beckett days, we always thought basketball at some point would start out selling the baseball magazine, and it came real close.
Right. Yep. No, I think that, and adding the fact that Topps is getting that license back, so you're going to start to see those products. We obviously saw the new Finest come out soon. That's going to draw a lot of people back to those cards, and it has. Look at the commons, look at the refractors. I know I open a ton of them for work, and the box prices are going up incredibly, and especially in that Topps Fleer Skybox kind of era of 94 to about 99, where you had massive rookie classes with multiple Hall of Famers in each. Those I've seen a massive increase of. And I have a question for you guys here, but that 70s show, Car Show says it's not it's a couple of different things. One of them, enjoy collecting, enjoy your collection, don't speculate. I completely agree. That's why you see East Carolina and Panther stuff on my wall. But when you say it's not a hobby, if you're looking at residual pricing when making a purchase, I understand what you're saying, but I also kind of think that's kind of the appeal to some of the hobby to some people. I mean, let's face it, the hobby changed. The hobby's changed a lot. A lot of people hate the term investments and everything like that, but a lot of hobbies are looked at by people as investments. So whether you like the word or not, that's fine. Choose to use it or don't. But I think a lot of people might enjoy that. Like, I know I personally do. I like trading, flipping stuff around, moving stuff around for whatever it is. I get enjoyment out of it because it's something that I'm doing while I'm already in the hobby. I still have my super collection of East Carolina, but that is a subsection of the hobby that I enjoy. And so I don't necessarily say that wouldn't make it a hobby. But I do completely agree. Enjoy your collection. That's obviously what it's always all about.
Well, I saw a couple of Ryan's buddies for the first time in several months at the last Dallas card show, and they were both very excited. They had picked up some really cool 20 and 30s cards for their collection. I believe 27 Exhibit, Fox, and Grove, and other things like that. And I shared their excitement. They were happy to get cards like that, and I don't blame them.
Fun. I mean, you have to look at it from both perspectives. That's where the hobby is right now. There's big money that's being thrown around. There's a lot more people that are going into it with disposable income, so prices are increasing. And to get some grails or get some cards that you want in your PC, you're going to have to go and trade some cards. You're going to have to sell some cards and work your way up. You can't just – one of the things I used to do, like collecting early on, is just keep every single card and say, cool, that's going to be my collection. But the hobby's gone to the point where you have to sell and try to upgrade. And that's the fun part, just climbing up to get bigger cards.
That's the thing. Not everybody can just I can't afford to keep every card I want to keep forever. Like if I want to go buy a Kobe rookie PSA 10, I can't just buy it and keep every single nice card I have on my shelf. Doesn't mean it's not a hobby. Doesn't mean it's not a collection. So, I think that's just one of the evolutions in the last couple of years of the hobby is it's turned into that commodities aspect, in a way. And I think a lot of people enjoy that. I know I myself do. I know a lot of other people do. I walk into my neighbor's house. He's always looking at graphs, everything, but he's not doing it. That's not his source of income. He's doing it because it's fun to him. And so I think that, it's just the people in the hobby and where we are in the hobby right now.
I even think, I was going to say, I wasn't around in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. I mean, I was very, very young, but I feel like that's always been a part of the hobby because we've still had price guides through Beckett, which people brought to card shows and always looked at stuff and tried to do well on that side of things too. I don't know how prevalent it was back then compared to today, but I feel like pricing has always been a big part of the hobby. It's not something new.
More formal pricing with Jim really began in 79. With his first books, that you can say pricing's really been around since about 1979, 1980. There was pricing before, but it was you sort of had to get it by feel and get it by experience, and you could get burned pretty easily. Fortunately, you could usually replace what you sold too cheaply. Yeah. But that is something, to remember. And my friend and my wonderful doggy daughter Charlie is trying to come in here, but she hasn't made it all the way. So I'm going to have to tell Charlie that. Charlie, I'll get you later.
Charlie, you're welcome to join the show.
Charlie's always welcome to join us.
Of course. But going back to what you were saying, Ryan, Beckett in the 90s, man. I mean, Beckett in the 90s was my peak collecting. And even though I wasn't selling a ton, at that point in time, I wasn't buying expensive cards, so I could afford to keep every card in my collection because I was a little kid. But I do know one thing I was doing was after I read all those articles, I was looking up the dollar value of the cards that I had, especially the cool ones. I mean,
it was fun.
Yeah. I mean, that's just what you did. Absolutely.
But one thing you see at the shows, and I know Ryan touched upon this on a Twitter post, is some people will put their vintage cards out for multiples of, we'll use the word in parentheses because I don't like that word, comps.
Yes.
Yeah, it's happening quite a bit, actually. I mean, it's what people will do is I'll give you an example, like a 1968 Mickey Mantle. They'll put something that's like a mid-grade, like maybe a PSA 4, 5 max, and they'll put on the sticker price $1,500. And you're like, come on, man. Like,
yeah.
For $1,500, you could get a really nice mantle from the 50s. Your 68 mantle isn't worth that, especially in the condition it is with rounded corners. But there's a lot of people that are new to the hobby that have no idea about the vintage cards, and they're hoping for, like, I hate to say it, a sucker, but hopefully a sucker goes to their table and buys that one card for $1,500 off them.
Well, one thing back in the day, before grading, is you would have dealers put out cards like that for full book, even if it was X or VGX. Mm-hmm. And yeah, they knew what they were doing, but they would put out a vintage card or two in their showcase, hoping if somebody walked in with older cards, this person has older cards in their showcase. They're interested in older cards. So there was some of that psychology in those days too, of people we'll use the word in air quotes, tricks like that to try to purchase older cards.
Yep. No, I can easily see that. And especially with the vintage, like you're saying, Ryan, there's not, it's not like the word Rich hates comps. But when someone wants to come up to negotiate that price or anything, there's not a lot out there. There's not a lot of information for them to look at. There's not enough for them to really make educated decisions. So, yeah, that's an interesting one, and I know you obviously go to tons of shows all the time. Have you seen an increase in this lately? Is this something you've been seeing an increase in, or has this been around, at least in your opinion, for a while?
I mean, it's been around, but I feel like some of the vintage dealers are jacking their prices up a little bit because a lot of people are getting into vintage right now, and they see the opportunity there.
Fair
and
enough.
also in some of these cases, the dealers paid good coin for their cards.
That is true.
And they don't want to take losses on what they perceive to be safe cards. They understand that. I looked up Juan Soto today, and I do anticipate he'll start hitting, but he's in the 240s right now. If he's still in the 240s in August, there'll be people trying to bail out of Juan Soto cards, if not earlier.
Yeah.
So
I was to say, it goes back to that original thought too, which vintage card prices are always going up. You hear that from dealers, and you hear that from people trying to buy that stuff as well. They'll say, "Oh, well, this is only going to go up, so this is my price." So It's a whole cycle.
Well, nothing always going to go up, but a lot of that stuff does go, even if it's up and down, usually ends up going for more than it started for.
And even if it flatlines with all the other cards are going down, technically it's going up as it's outperforming the other stuff in the market.
Yeah. Very, very, very fair point. Logan, of course, we all know all of your NASCAR cards are going in that vortex, never to be seen again. We know that, King. Everybody knows where those NASCAR cards are going. Let's see. That 70 show. It's interesting with the new wave dealers selling vintage cards, clash of styles. Interesting negotiations this weekend regarding this. I could see that. I can definitely see how some modern dealers and some vintage dealers with some modern and some modern dealers with some vintage can definitely it's definitely a clash of styles 100%. I'm sure you see that a lot too.
Yeah, so honestly, I will say it's fun because when you see a vintage dealer with a modern card, they typically hate it. They got it in a trade or something. They're more willing to move it. With the modern guy, if you see a vintage card in their showcase, same exact thing. They don't know anything about it. I got this in a trade. I know this player is good, but I don't know anything about it. I want to get rid of it. And you use those to your advantage. You bring modern to a modern table, you get the vintage card. You bring vintage to a vintage table, you'll get that modern card, and you just keep making deals.
Well, Ryan, I want to ask you a related question to this.
Sure.
You had a chance to go to the Dallas Card Show, but you chose a different show, and I agree with the logic of it. You went to Philly for basically the non-sports national this weekend.
Correct. That was fun.
Do you feel it was the right decision? And if so, why? And were the pricing structures different at that show?
It's honestly a completely different card show experience. It's hard to explain, but this felt like what a card show was about 10 years ago before everything changed and it was all briefcases and like high-end displays. Dealers literally had stacks of cards on their tables. Everything was out there. No one was like, oh, you have to get this exact price. People were like, all right, this is, for example, I grabbed a bunch of rock cards in a binder. It's like $2-3 each. And it didn't matter. Some of them had creases. Some of them looked like they're $6 or $7, $2 or $3 each. Doesn't matter. And every single dealer that I talked to knew anything and everything about their cards. They're like, oh, this was distributed here. This is exact year, everything like that. Going to card shows nowadays, a lot of dealers don't even know the cards they have. Yeah. They just go, oh, it's $1,000 card. Can you tell me about it? It's $1,000. That's the conversation there. The people there were lifelong collectors. Like everyone that was tabling was, oh, I've been doing this for 20 years, 30 years. These are some of my duplicates in my collection. And you could have conversations with these guys and you could just tell that they were passionate about it. They didn't care about making an extra buck over you versus some of these other shows where it's literally just a business model and a transaction at the end of the day. Best I can do is 95% comps because that's my overhead.
Right.
These guys are like, oh, you want to get into vintage cards and vintage non-sports? Here, let me teach you about this. Have you heard about this type of card before? And literally, dealers, they're showing me like 10 or 15 different cards, trying to educate me on different things that I haven't seen before. And like, it was really, really fun.
So what, if you don't mind me asking, because I've got kind of follow up with that, what show was that exactly? I missed it.
So that was the Philly non-sports show.
Okay. All right. Cause I missed the Dallas card show, unfortunately, cause, I'm headed down to Dallas this weekend for Collecticon, which is another, completely other nice, very nice right there, man. Beautiful.
Ooh, that's the 30s card. I love that.
Yeah.
So it was a 32 caramel FDR first presidential card of his.
Those are
Million
some nice
for
ones.
rookie card as well.
Did I see some when you showed those 4 cards? Were they Beatles cards or did I miss?
Oh yeah, so these cards were Monty Gums from
Nice.
1966. So, for example, they're pretty cool. On the back, they have either planes or cars on them. So this is the Rolling Stones. Usually these are real beaters, and these were some of the $2 or $3 stacks. So this one has a crease on it, but I don't really mind. It's a pretty rare card. But there's another one, this one, which doesn't have a crease on it. Like you can see the backs on these. There's such little information on this type of stuff too, unless you go to these shows and talk to dealers and really know about it. Like that's the fun part about non-sports is it's all research. You can't just go online and find out that information. There's been so many sets that I've discovered by just trying to buy cards of like, I don't know, bands or important figures and doing the research on it and talking to people that are passionate, that've been doing it for a long time. It's like what reminds me of like a collection or like a hobby.
Right. And that's where I'm doing all the collecticons this year, so I'll be in Dallas for this week's show. If you guys are there, definitely stop by, say what's up. But I've noticed that at Collecticon too. There's very little, if any, sports there. At the first show, there was one booth that had a couple of boxes of sports. Everything else is Pokemon, TCG, non-sport, things like that, Funko Pops, everything along those lines. And it was a lot of the same of like what you were saying. A lot of good deals to be made in every booth, incredibly well educated. Yes, there were booths with, thousands and $10,000 cards, but in the discussion about like their negotiation methods, oh man, you can make tons of deals, at least at the first Collecticon I went to. So I find that interesting in the non-sport area.
Ryan,
I think that's a very big
discussed
difference.
this. I'm sorry, Ryan. I know we discussed this before you went there. I'm glad you listened to me.
Yeah, I was like, I was in between because I know like anytime I go to Dallas, I do well like financially moving stuff, and because a lot of Dallas is modern, probably like 20% vintage. But like you can go to the show, turn $1,000 and 3,000 just flipping by the end of the weekend. But I really wanted to go to Philly to get some non-sports stuff. The one thing I will say, which I was a little disappointed on, is there wasn't a lot of European non-sports. I noticed it was mostly like Topps and Gum Ink and Bowman material from like anywhere from the 30s through 60s. They're like, I know there was a comment on Billy Joel's rookie card from 1980. He does have some earlier cards as well, but there was no Panini really rock and roll stickers there, which was kind of disappointing because that's a big part of my collection is going after that type of stuff. I was able to pick up a 1968 Mr. Softy set. I'll show it. It was really cool rock and roll stuff, but not much there.
While he's doing that, Ryan, I have a hint for you where I know you can pick up some of those cards.
All right, hear about it, but don't say it on here because I need to grab some of those cards.
Okay.
Because they're so tough to find. But I'll give you for example. This was my favorite pickups here. So this is 68. It's considered one of Hendrix's rookie cards. He has a bunch of them. He has Dutch Gum cards. He has this one, which is his largest card, and then he has 2 different Paninis. But right there, pretty cool.
Yeah, and the great thing is there's actually a good resource for Dutch Gum checklists. They don't give you a ton of information, but they tell you what year and what the checklists are. And we actually found a set that wasn't in that checklist, so I had to get that set in. But yeah, there is a great resource for Dutch Gum checklists. There's also even a really good there's a set, I can't describe it, but it's like every card takes us 10 minutes to ID. It's not like it's player driven, but There's one brand that just drives you up a tree.
Well, like one of the brands that I don't know anything about. I got to research it. So, I'll give you an example on this one. So this is an Elvis, but if you look at the back, each of these cards have different dances. I believe it's from the 1960s, but they're so bright.
I've actually ID'd cards from that set.
Yeah, those are nice.
I mean, I could probably look it up and tell you. I'd have to figure it out, but I remember that because it's like a Dutch set, if I remember correctly. It's a really cool set.
It is. They're super colorful compared to a lot of other releases.
And the dance lessons on the back is what makes that set so cool.
Yeah.
Yes. Tango, the twist, the waltz. Like it's.
Yeah, I really enjoyed finding out about that set because not that I'm going to own those cards, but I just enjoy the research. If you've talked to me, research has always been one of the passions for me. So I get to see the cards and in a way own them without ever having to physically spend any money on them.
Absolutely. And one thing about researching, so I'm not a pre-war soccer expert by any means, but I'm trying to learn a little bit of the names. I found this in a bargain bin right here.
Wow.
And I was able, this guy, Italian Hall of Famer, and one of my friends is collecting Italian soccer Hall of Famers. So I was able to trade it to him for a Jack Hobbs cricket rookie card from 1907. Jack Hobbs is a top 10 cricketer of all time. And I wanted to have a 1907 Capstan Wills in my collection. So it worked out for both of us. But it's funny, like there was soccer there, very little, but there's some soccer in bargain bins. There's some boxing, and there's like two dealers that actually had baseball cards.
Well, I saw you had a 51 Topps ringside among the cards you were showing us.
Yep, the Ray Robinson.
Yeah.
And it has a diamond cut, but this card is sharp.
No, that's a beautiful one. And that 70s says the Elvis is a reverse negative like the 57 Hank. So pretty sweet. Let's see, Texas Card Dude. Actually, what's up, Brad? Seeing my friends was the best part of your weekend, I'm sure, at the Dallas show. I know we had our live show. I was actually in the middle of a baseball game, so wasn't able to call in, but was able to watch it. Looks like Rich, you guys were having a blast. It looks like it was pretty good, but now that it's over and everything, what are your takeaways from it? How was it compared to other shows?
Remember, I'm also tethered a bit to the ComC booth, until,
of course,
unless more people show up. So I walk around some, but not a ton.
Sure.
I will tell you that we took in almost 30,000 cards this weekend, which is a very impressive total. And we were very happy. And at the previous show, we did 25,000. So people know us. So I don't really look at the cards. Steph and Ange do the heavy lifting. I just get to talk to people. But it's fun talking to people when they're dropping off stuff about what they're dropping off and what they're looking for, and all that. And I'm going to use the term doing some light promotion. I have a smaller version of the show I used to run for my synagogue next weekend. So I was talking that up a bit too. When I had somebody come up to me, that was my wife's favorite show. You had that wonderful stuff on the floor, the Island of Misfit Toys and the snack bar with the reasonably priced food. And, that was my wife's favorite show. And she was, and he wasn't really talking about money there. He was just talking about how much his wife enjoyed going to that one. I will be honest, I don't have prizes for this one. It's just going to be bags of cards. We'll have prizes for the Labor Day weekend. But, it was nice talking to collectors who are excited to see the show coming back. And I was warning them all, it's a slimmed down version. By Labor Day, we'll have a better version. This is just we opened the building less than 2 weeks ago. This is just a trial run, basically.
Nice.
But and when it came to selling cards, after Dr. Beckett's content creator dinner, I brought some of the leftover dinner to one of my friends who was monitoring and watching part and being security for part of the trade night room. And I knew a couple of the vendors, and one guy told me he had a sale at 1 a.m. for $950. At 1 a.m. on Saturday night. And another person was thrilled. He was there till 2:00, like 2 straight nights. These are people I know, not people, I don't talk to everybody. And I know my vintage guys all did fairly well at the show. I know one of my friends has a couple vintage tables, and he was saying Saturday was a great day, which it was. if you're reasonably priced, you're selling cards. My friend Duke, who has a lot of cards between a quarter and let's say $10, he's got some better stuff too. He had to replenish like 3 times during the show.
Wow.
So there's still people selling cards. I have to go to Duke's table 2 or 3 times during the show. I start on Friday and I go back on Saturday and I go back on Sunday and I find stuff each time.
Yeah.
So there are people out there that are, very good. And Duke used to live in Austin. He's still clearing out storage units of stuff.
Very nice. All right, guys, put the link to the chat in the comments again. Please give us a call if you'd like to call in, join the show or anything. Or if
Ryan,
you have
is it
any
still
questions
Frank
as
running
well.
the show? I don't remember the guy's name. Is it still Frank running the show in Philly?
No, it was a girl. I can't remember her name though. She said she's been there since like 84 or something like that, if I remember.
Okay, person of color?
No.
Okay, I was trying to think who it would be because I know my friend D's done most of those shows.
I can look it up and see.
Yeah, look it up for me. I'm curious who's running the show nowadays.
Nice. So 2 good shows over the weekend.
Yeah, I mean, everybody keeps thinking the hobby's dying.
I know.
Not, it's like, excuse me, have you been to the Dallas Card Show recently?
Yeah. Or any show. Seriously, I mean, any show. Shoot, the Hickory shows here, the Charlotte shows, any of them. They're jam-packed, and you nailed it, Rich. If your cards are priced right, they're going to sell right now. If your cards are priced reasonable, they're going to sell. Like, 100%. At least I've had no problem here or at any show I've ever.
No matter what the economy is, if your stuff is reasonably priced, it sells in good times and bad times.
Yep, 100%. Where was the Philly show? I don't know. Right, he's looking.
It was now. So if you know where the normal Philly card show is, it was about another 20 minutes out past it. It was a hike, so it's technically not in Philly, but it's down over there. I don't know it doesn't have the name of the person. I have it on the interview. So like when I drop it'll be there. But it's in Oaks, Pennsylvania, the Philadelphia Center.
Nice. And as John says, his last 2 Q shows bought the Jackie, and congratulations on that, Jackie, brother. Yes. It's beautiful. I saw it on your socials. It's a banger. It's a gorgeous one. And like you said, somebody that I know prices their cards very well, doing great, able to buy a Jackie from it. I mean, if they're priced right, they're always gonna move.
I'm looking at the list of the dealer names, and there are still a bunch of dealers doing that show from when I lived in New Jersey before I moved to Texas in 1990.
Nice, that's awesome.
So they are still out there.
Passionate, man. Like you could just tell the passion. Anytime you go to the table, have you seen this card before? Have you seen this card before? It kept showing me stuff. Like that's how you know they love the hobby.
Yep. That's interesting. That's a show that I'm going to put on my show bucket list now. You've got me really interested, especially being I was a touring musician for almost a decade. So I collect quite a bit of music cards and stuff. Seeing what you just showed earlier, I'd love to go to those shows. That looks like a lot of fun. So definitely going to be adding that one to the bucket list.
I think they do it twice a year as well.
Sweet. Even better.
But yeah, I'm definitely.
It's a really cool show. I'm glad you went. Yeah. And I would definitely go again if I were you.
Oh, I will. And the thing is, too, what you'll like is every table is different. Like versus card shows today, where you could go table to table, and if you wouldn't tell, like they have a different display case, you would tell that they're the same exact cards. Every table, the layout, all the cards there, different. And it was pretty cool to see.
Nice. Well, I'm glad the travels went well to Philly, and Rich and everybody at the Hobby Hotline crew, of course, holding down the Dallas show. Two awesome shows this weekend. Got a question for you guys as we got about 15 minutes or so left. Didn't bring this up before the pre-show, but I had it in my notes and I wanted to get your guys' opinion on it. The other day it was just announced that right now, I guess Costco on their website does auctions. Right now, listed on Costco's website is a Michael Jordan, Julius Erving signed 2006 Upper Deck SP Game Used PSA, starting at $13,499. Then we've got another Jordan autographed Upper Deck chronologically BGS 910 on Costco, and these look to be branded under the brand specification. It doesn't say Upper Deck, it says Fanatics. So it's leading people to speculate that Fanatics is posting these cards up on Costco, and Fanatics has something to do with it. We've seen cards start to move into Costco a little bit every now and then. Do you guys, what do you think of seeing $15,000 cards on Costco's website? And then do you think that this is kind of maybe tipping the hat a little bit of where some of distribution might be going, where Costco might be getting a little more
slabbing cards for 7-8 years?
Yeah.
When I was writing for Sports Collectors Daily, and that ended like in 2016 or 2015, I remember emailing Rich when I saw that. So they've been slabbing cards long before they came.
Well, these are slabbed by PSA and BGS, but
but they slab their own cards too.
Yes, they do.
So they were doing things like this long before this.
Right.
And if if they think they can make money with it, bless them. There's nothing wrong with we used to talk at Beckett back in the day, the wider audience. We want to go to the wider audience. Well, Costco is certainly a wider audience than a baseball card show.
It is.
Yeah. Right.
Buy the boxes, buy the crate.
Yeah. Yeah.
And besides, they have good samples of foods there usually.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But I don't have any problems with that.
No.
Any way to get cards publicized, and as long as those prices are fair and not, as we were talking, like 3x, 4x, 5x, if they're within the market, why not?
Yeah. No, I completely agree. I was just curious, it made me think, I do think that Costco is going to be one of those places as I do think distribution is going to be expanded greatly. This is an interesting channel to use. I think, I personally do think it is a small step in to move in a little bit more. But we'll see what happens. It's just something that I saw pop up and was interesting. We do have a question, another one from DR. Which we'll answer before the show, guys. Please leave any questions that you have for real in the chat. What is one thing hobby related that has surprised each of us so far this year? So, Ryan, how about you start this one off, man? What's something that surprised you this year?
Wasn't Fanatics buying Tops earlier this year? Or
yes.
All the license? Yeah. I mean, that was a big surprise early on.
Yeah,
it was, but in the sense they had to buy either Topps or Panini at some point.
Yeah.
Because then they would have had to create all the brand names. By buying Topps, it's a good business move to get to to keep all the brand names.
Yeah.
So in a sense, they had to buy one or the other. And if one of Josh Luber's interviews, he talked about the interests of Fanatics. It was baseball, football, basketball, and culture. The word hockey was never included, so Upper Deck was just allowed to continue being Upper Deck. So their only interest seemed to be Topps or Panini. Topps, Michael Eisner is not as young as he used to be. He probably said, you know what, this is as good as it's going to get. Let me sell now, and I'll preserve everybody's job, and I get out with whatever money I get out with.
Yeah.
Not a bad gig.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. One thing that shocked me, I'd have to say, Ziggy, dude, you're reading my mind. I would have to say the not necessarily the just breakers, but the amount of loyalty to dishonest and disloyal people. I guess would be one thing that shocked me the most. I can't for a million years go watch a video of a guy that's pretending to be a thug who lives 30 minutes from me in his next door to his mom, talking about kidnapping and shooting people, and then seeing people comment underneath, oh, that's a real guy. That's a guy I want to break with. That's probably the most shocking thing to me, is to see what people are willing and who people are willing to go with these days and who people are willing to trust.
I'm going to paraphrase a line I once wrote for Sports Collectors Daily, and I'm going to use an obscure set reference. I'll include information about the set. If I went to jail for 2 years and I came out of jail and I found a group of what they call 1923 fan cards, of which 3 total cards are known to the hobby, maybe 4 by now, but we'll say 4 total cards, and it's like a 400 card set. And there are 4 total cards known. If I found a bunch of them, they wouldn't care that I spent time in jail for whatever reason. Guess what they're going to do?
Yeah.
They're going to buy the cards from me.
Absolutely.
So money always will talk in that. If they think they can make money from you on the break, even if your morals aren't what it should be, guess what?
Yep. And no, and just real quick, that 70s show, that I do agree it has been the case. Master, of course, everyone knows about him. But like Ziggy said, Cook's the 99. That actually also happened about 30, 45 minutes from here. I don't know what it is about the people around Hickory that want to be breakers, but, they both lived about 20 minutes from each other, actually. Back then when that happened, he was done. He moved states away. He was blacklisted from every show, moved states away, business crumbled. He's out of it. He's gone. He's out of the hobby completely. So just what I was saying more is, I guess, how much it's changed.
It really hasn't changed. I hate to tell you this. It really hasn't changed since the 80s. We knew in the 80s who the bad guys were, but as long as they paid for the tables, most promoters were happy to look the other way. Some promoters,
I'm sure.
Some promoters were very strict about that. And I argue a lot of times, and I'll use it in quotes because it's not argument, but I discuss with one of our fellow hobby hotline hosts, Bo, that up in Madison, Wisconsin, that he should charge admission. And my favorite reason for that is that if I let you in for free, I can't stop you at the door. But if I know you're a bad guy and I'm charging you admission, I can refuse admission to you at the door, even if I charge you $1. Because then it's not a public event anymore.
I didn't know that.
Never had to use it, but I always wanted that in my hip pocket.
Right. Yep. Yeah, so I don't know. That would be mine. Good question, DR. A lot of shocking things in the hobby this year, I think. And I'm sure we'll see plenty more. It seems as we're getting very close to the National, which I know a good majority of all of us will be up there, and a lot of you watching will be up there. This year, I think isn't it always around the National when either big news breaks and then people want to do something stupid. It seems every year there's some type of trimming scandal. There's some type of breaker getting busted. There's some type of BS, and then there's some big news. And then there's the National. So we're getting to the BS part right now. Let's get to the cool big news, and then let's get to the show.
I was going to say the market crashes also apparently every
day.
Few right before the National too. Oh, the market's crashing.
I'm pretty sure the market's crashed, gone up, and crashed according to social media since we started the show. So
you aren't wrong.
That seems to be the case nowadays.
Ryan brought up a good point earlier. One of the people who was at Dr. Jim's dinner for the is Rob Veras, who did a very well produced 12 show season about life in his cards store. Burbank Cards, they have like 42 million cards in stock, and they have a world of new cards, they have a world of old cards, they have a world of quarter cards, and they have a world of cards you need for your sets.
Amazing group.
Yeah, it is amazing. And John Keating was out there, Sat 70s Card Store. He was out there last month. But one of the things is that many of the people he interviewed, a common thread was they traded their way up for the cards in their collection.
Yeah.
They found they took advantage of an up market on one person and traded that card for something else, or used a little cash in that card to get a better card. We've been able to trade our way up for more than 40 years.
Oh yeah, I just did it this playoff run. I'd been going hard and telling people for years I thought Desmond Bain was going to be amazing. I was buying Desmond Bain when he was 50 cents to $1. This playoff run cashed out, just got a bunch of awesome, gorgeous Kobe's that I was looking for in a trade. Was able to trade tons of them for it. So, I mean, yeah, trading up still going on all the time now, that's for sure. And definitely looking forward to the trade nights and trade night on the train. I like that. Yes, trade night on the train. I'm totally down.
I want to give a public shout out to Mr. Keating, who helped arrange for me to get to the National this year.
Nice. Well, we're glad that.
And I'm glad I'm going to be able to be there so I can harass both Ryan and Drew.
Always, my man. Always. All right. Well, guys, I guess it is. What time is it now? I guess it is about time to wrap up.
It is, yeah.
Let's see. That's 70. And you did that with your wives. Ended up with an 89, Matt. Very nice. That 70s. All right, y'all. Well, thank you all for tuning into this week's show. We've got, obviously, Hobby Hotline coming to you live this Saturday, 11 a.m. Make sure you tune in just like every Saturday and every Tuesday. You can catch Hobby Hotline Overtime. But Ryan, Rich, it was a blast, my man.
Absolutely. And next Tuesday night, Bo and I will be talking about card show promoting. So it's another general topic. And if there's any hobby news, we'll talk about it. But it's fun talking about evergreen topics like vintage card pricing.
Man. Well, no, I loved it. I think, we talked about everything from CD land lawsuits, card shows, vintage cards, to lots of different stuff. Those are my favorite shows. And, especially when we can talk some of the old schools, that's what I've been diving headfirst into as well. But
yes, John's right. Hit that like button, folks.
Yes, pound that like button. Please thumbs up, subscribe to the YouTube, anything you guys can. We greatly appreciate it. And, of course, it'll be up on all podcast platforms as well. And that'll be up here very, very shortly. And as always, Saturday show, 11 a.m. Eastern time. But till then, unless you guys got anything else, we'll sign off. So
we'll see you soon.
Yes.
See you next.
Have a good one.